Hi everyone, today we will be discussing the release of the new Mrdcl with Phil Hearn, the director of Mrdc Software, and he will answer all the questions I have for him. Hi Phil, how are you?
Hi Nikki, I'm fine, thanks. Yourself?
Great, I'm also good as you. So I have here my first question. So you've described the new release of Mrdcl as moving Mrdcl in a new direction. Why do you say that?
I think I have talked about it being a new direction. Maybe I should say it's a new focus rather than a new direction. Perhaps that makes a bit more sense and add clarity. Our history, if you like, with Mrdcl is that it's, as everyone knows, a very powerful scripting language. I would argue the most powerful there is in the world. But it's, for the last 10 years, I would say, we've really focused on productivity. Trying to ensure that staff in companies that are doing data processing, producing analysis and tabulations can do it as productively and as quickly and efficiently as possible with the lowest level of risk. And I think that comes from my background in some ways, in the sense that I've, in my past anyway, run data processing bureaus, where if you can do something at 20% quicker or even 10% quicker, that can add up to a lot of money over the year. So even if you spend, I don't know, let's say $100,000 on data processing, and you can do it 10%, that's $10,000 you save. If it's 20%, it's $20,000. And of course, if you're bigger than that, it's even more money. So I've always had an interest in productivity and making sure people who use the software get the most out of it. I think where we've moved on to, it's still productivity, if you like, but I think our focus that we're moving on to as we sort of come into 2021 even, is on automation and trying to put processes together so that people can automate tasks and deliver better, if you like, more efficient research. And I think that there's a lot of talk of automation in market research now. And I think that's been around for some time on things like tracking studies, where it's a big project that runs every month, quarter, year, whatever it might be. But I'm also looking at lower level projects, one-off projects, for example, where you just want to automate a report or something like that off the back of analysis that you've conducted. So yes, perhaps saying it's a new direction, perhaps going a bit too far. It's actually perhaps more of a focus on productivity, but looking at automation and how that can help people deliver their research better and quicker.
Oh, sounds good. All right. So, you talk about the new direction that we are moving to automation, right, and productivity. And you talk about the new direction, in particular automation. Is that the start of more developments in this area?
Yes, I think what we've done with this release of Mrdcl is we don't think we've completed the journey by any stretch of the imagination. I think the vision that we have is that that it should be possible to plug together the bits of software you want so that you do things as efficiently as suits you. And I'll give you an example of that sort of outside market research. If somebody moves home, they might just go and buy all their furniture from one place. When they move that home, they more likely will have some furniture they'll bring with them. They want to add some bits to it that make that home complete, if you like. Or they might actually just piece together different pieces of furniture that make their home complete for them. And I see the same sort of thing with software in a way that, ideally, being totally biased here, of course, I would want people to use maybe Snap for their online surveys, Mrdcl for their heavy-duty data processing, and the CYS platform for online dashboards. But I'm also wise enough to realise that those products might not suit everybody in every case. And so picking the bits that fit into that particular company's process is very important. And I know there's a lot of software vendors out there who want to sort of say, well, here's the one solution that does everything. I think that's becoming less and less true. And actually linking bits of software together efficiently, I think, is the name of the game now. And what we're trying to do with Mrdcl is make that part of the process. Sure, you can link it to our own products, that goes without saying, but we're also looking to make sure it can link from and to other products really efficiently, so that when people are running surveys, they can use the bits of software that suit their business best to automate things. And so, when I say linking, I'm looking at, we've got things in Mrdcl like batch runs now that automate runs. So, we want to make Mrdcl and our other software products part of a process so that you can pick and choose as a customer what suits you best. And yes, of course, I'd like it to be all our products, but I realise that there's different reasons why people want different products, or perhaps they've got a history of using a particular product, or a client insists on using a particular product, or maybe they get data from a particular piece of software from a supplier, which means they have to use a particular product for part of a process. But it's important that we fit in where customers need us in that sort of chain of events, or as a link, as I see it.
Great. So that's something like already sounds like some big developments. So can we look at those in some more details? Can you outline the import developments?
Yes, I mean, let's take an example perhaps, and I will go back to tracking studies because they're easier to perhaps to conceptualize and see how they fit into this sort of thing. But I also think it's actually important for ad hoc projects and smaller projects as well. But I think it's important, for example, that let's say someone's getting supplied with data and that data comes in SPSS format, for example. It's important that you can bring that data into the platform you want to use, say, for tabulations, and that then you can push that, the results of that into a reporting system or an online dashboard system, so that it can be repeated as easily as possible. And that's obvious on a tracking study where you say, yes, okay, well, in 3 months' time, I want to run the same survey and just run through the same process and update things. Well, even that's not as simple as it might sound, because typically questionnaires change even on tracking studies that run quarterly. People will add a few questions or take some out. So you need tools that can automate that. But also, I think at more perhaps a lower level, I think on ad hoc projects, what I see happening too often is that someone, as part of their job, has got to import some data from SPSS, perhaps process it in a package like Mrdcl for tabulations, and then push it onto an online dashboard system. And all that looks okay in theory, but actually the practice is that they perhaps spend 3 or 4 hours just getting the fine-tuning of the importing from SPSS just right, so that it works okay in the tabulation software. And then when they push it onto the dashboard system or whatever it might be, that takes another few hours. And then if something goes wrong in that process and they need to repeat it, they end up spending all that time again. Now, what we're looking to achieve is that these processes are specified and can be put in place so that if you have to repeat the import from SPSS, shall we say, at the beginning of that process or those steps, you just press a button, it automatically knows what to do, and the whole process is automatic. So automation is often thought of in terms of how you can use it in a tracking study or perhaps a multi-country study, but also at a very low level as well on an a small ad hoc project where perhaps the data's coming in over a week and the client wants some top line figures and you want to re-import it. You don't want staff spending 2, 3, 4 hours or perhaps even longer, working with the data and to have to get it into the software they're using. And I think this is sort of a hidden cost that a lot of research companies don't really realise. People who work in data processing are very prone to sort of just getting on with their job and having to deal with the problems they encounter. And somebody at the top might not know they're spending 3 hours on that, and if the data's resent, it's another 3 hours. So those sorts of things I count as automation, but very practical automation in making processes smooth, simple, and hopefully error-free as well.
Okay, and how does batch run works, and how will they be expanded further in the future?
So at the moment in Mrdcl, we've put in a batch run facility so that you can, for example, do automatic runs of multiple tables. So if you've got, let's say, a tracking study and you want a monthly, quarterly, and annual set of analyses, you can just literally set those up as something that you run automatically, and all within one program within one script, all the differences that you need can be controlled. Users of Mrdcl will probably be familiar with the fact that in your script, for example, you can say, well, if I'm doing the monthly run, I want this bit of code for my banner. I want these analysis breaks, for example. It needn't be analysis breaks, but as an example, if I'm doing a quarterly run, I want some different analysis breaks. And if I'm doing an annual run, I want yet another set of analysis breaks. And likewise with if you're doing a multi-country study, where if you're doing a survey across the whole of Asia, but you're grouping all the data together for Asia, you might want to analyse that by each country. When you're doing individual country runs, you might want to break that down by regions within that country and so on. So all that sort of thing can be automated in Mrdcl, and the new batch run facilities that we've now incorporated allow you to actually just set that process up so that you can click a button and it will go off and run all those runs for you. And then if you want to go a step further and on the back of that perhaps put those tables into some specific format in Excel, so you might want them in some suitable Excel layout, you can automate that process as well. So this is the beginning of what I call, automating the tabulation part, and Mrdcl is accommodating that. It's going to expand beyond that in the future. It'll go to then automating the import. At the moment, at this release, it's going to remember how you imported data, so that if you do need to rerun it, you just click a button and automate that process again, and it'll just read it back in. We'd like to pull that all together at the next release, which is not too far away, so that the import and the running of the sets of tables is automatic. And then finally, our development for 2021 is that Mrdcl will have a charting module on the back of it, so that you can actually script what charts you want in PowerPoint, Excel, and so on, so that you can automate reports off the back, all within one process. So from reading data right through to reporting. And we're also linking through to our online dashboard system, so that can be updated as well in real time if necessary. So some really big developments there. They're coming in parts, if you like, over the next year or two, but some really big developments to really start to automate things, save people's time and improve productivity.
Okay, so you mentioned a charting module, right? So is this something that's still in development?
Yes, it is. We've done some starting work on that. We've automated the ability to get figures in spreadsheets in exactly the way you want, whether that's to present the figures in spreadsheets in a particular way with perhaps figures and percentages, or just percentages, or whatever it might be that you want. So you can now automate that process off the back of running your tables in Mrdcl. And the next step then is to just take those figures and link them through to PowerPoint templates, or if you want to build a new PowerPoint template, so that you can build reports and charts automatically, just so that the figures are fed straight through. And that, of course, will work well on tracking studies and multi-country studies, but it'll also work well on ad hoc projects where you'll be able to build your presentations in PowerPoint, and let's say you're waiting for the last bit of field work to come in, you can just add that data and it will automatically update the PowerPoint presentation for you. So the bit that automates the charting on the back is in development at the moment, with completion for 2021. But it's already a good way down the road. We've already got a lot of that in place. So, this is something that's going to be coming to Mrdcl next year.
Okay, great. So with regards to the new release of Mrdcl, so the new release now has Mrdcl Classic and Mrdcl Central. So what is the difference, and why the two programs?
Okay, well, the thinking behind this, I suppose, is that there's two or three thoughts in our heads here. There are a significant number of Mrdcl users who have used it for a long while and probably don't want to change too much, because used it for 20 years or whatever it might be. So the classic version of Mrdcl will be available just as it stands now. If you use Mrdcl Central, which effectively sort of sits on top of Mrdcl Classic, you get some extra things that you don't get in the classic version. So I mean, some examples of that, and some of these sort of don't sound particularly exciting until you come to use them and actually get the advantage of using it. So Central's got a completely new file management system. So rather than just a list of projects that you've opened until you clear that list down in Mrdcl Classic, you get now some really good file management. So you can look and see what happened to runs, you can check their logs, you can pick your favorite projects so that they stay at the top of the list. That sort of stuff isn't perhaps a big deal, but it's what I think users expect in 2020 in their software. So if you like, that's perhaps the first thing, is it's catching up with where software is at in 2020. So the file management system is really quite complete and really good. And another example of that is where you have a project that's got multiple STP files, where it's got perhaps 10 STP files associated with it. In some cases, I've seen over 100. So now you can nominate what the control STP file is, and all the other STP files are stored within the file management system as sort of sub-files of that main control file. And that makes it easier for working with, to navigate and to edit and change. So we've done things like that. Now that doesn't sound very exciting until you come to use it for real, so I'm not going to talk about that too much more. But another thing that we put in there, which I must admit, I never thought was, when I first learned to program many years ago, I never thought it was very exciting at first, but once I saw it, I saw the advantage. And that's that we've got a color-coded editor in Mrdcl Central now. And I know when I was programming, and going back a few years, the first time I got a color-coded editor so that different bits of syntax were highlighted in different colors, I thought it was a gimmick. But in reality, it does save you time. Your eye goes to things, you find errors, you find what you're looking for so much quicker. And it doesn't sound like a major productivity gain, but it actually makes life much easier for you. You can find what you want and work with your project. So that's another thing that we've added to Mrdcl Central, that you can now have a color-coded editor with different bits of syntax highlighted in different colors, so that you can navigate much more easily around your project and the things jump out at you. We've also, as I think I mentioned already, we've also automated tables in Excel and give you much more flexibility there, so that you can format them with a hyperlinked table of contents, all within Mrdcl, and make that just a sort of additional process that's run automatically. Some people might be familiar with our report index, which we had as a standalone piece of software that sat on the back of Mrdcl, didn't sit on the back, but was used as a separate tool to take tables from Mrdcl. That and more is now integrated into the Mrdcl Central, and we'll continue to improve that. And of course, that will be the sort of seed, if you like, for automating PowerPoint presentations using Mrdcl script in the future as well. So there's a lot of stuff that's improved on automation. On importing, we've now introduced imports from Snippet directly into Mrdcl, and we've also introduced imports from SPSS as well. Now, that comes really with quite an intelligent, we get a lot of data that comes in from SPSS, because SPSS is often used as a standard for storing data. And whilst it's great at multivariate statistics, it's not used often for tables, or is not particularly easy to use for tables. So people import their data from SPSS, and SPSS doesn't really understand the concept of multi-response variables, and has some problems typically when you import from SPSS. In most bits of software, you end up with a lot of variables that aren't linked together because they're multi-response variables, for example, which SPSS doesn't handle well. Now, with the import from SPSS in Mrdcl Central, you can link those all together. So you can say, you me example that Q3_1 to Q3_10 is actually one question in a multi-response with 10 different responses, and Mrdcl will pull that together so that when you import or re-import, automatically you get variables as you want them in Mrdcl, and that's a traditional problem that most other software suffers from when it imports from SPSS, that you get an import that's sort of okay, but really isn't in the form you need for your analysis. And then on top of that, we've added more videos. I think our video library is up to about 50, 60 videos now, and it's increasing by another 20 I think it's early next year, by January next year. And they've been really popular. So many people have written to us and said how useful they are, covering all sorts of topics. And in future, we've got plans to have a snippet editor so that you can pull in bits of code into the visual editor that I've talked about, so that you can, if you want to define a multivariable, let's take a simple example, and you can't quite remember the syntax, you just pull it in and you just fill in the gaps that refer to your particular variable you want to specify, and that code just drops in. So that would be a great way of learning new techniques. And I think we've got plans for something like 100 snippets of code to be available in about a year's time, and they'll be released at different stages over the next year. So some really, I said at the beginning perhaps that productivity wasn't our focus for automation, but actually there's also some more productivity features going in the current release, and also the one that's scheduled for about this time next year. So yeah, exciting times.
Oh, great. So you talk about automation. Why is that?
Yeah, I think I do keep coming back to automation, and perhaps I should have started at the beginning by saying why automation is important. And there's some obvious reasons. Yes, it speeds up things. It means that staff have got less things to do. They can press a button, and something that perhaps would have taken some manual work in the past is much quicker now. But I think one of the things underestimated, because people in DP tend to underestimate the time they spend correcting errors and fixing errors, is it reduces errors. And again, of my experience of running a DP bureau, not perhaps for a few years now, but people spend a lot of time, more time than they think, correcting errors when they're doing analysis. So anything that reduces errors is important, besides speeding up the process and being able to deliver to clients faster. And it just makes it easier to handle things like tracking studies and so on. And one of the initiatives that I'm very excited about at the moment is Tsapi, or I think it's the acronym. It's been pronounced Tsapi with a T on the front. And that's, if you like, an upgrade on Spss that's been around, I think, for nearly 30 years now. And that's an API that will store survey data so that bits of software can link straight into that, and you could collect your data in one bit of software and process it in another, because everything's being held in a universal format, and lets the transfer of information from one software to the other become something that's just, if you like, automatic, and something that you can plug into. And Mrdcl software will be supporting that development, and making our software compatible with Tsapi as soon as it's up and running. It's in its early days at the moment, and it was in fact only announced, I think, about a month or so ago. So it is in its early days, but I think that's an exciting development that will help automation. And automation is sort of something that I think perhaps clients expect. They don't understand, I don't think, always, buyers of research, why it takes us so long to move data from here to here, and then put it in an online dashboard, or put it into a PowerPoint report. Because in other business areas, that all seems pretty automatic. So when I carry out a bank transaction now, if I pay money, it's off my account and in someone else's account, if you like, in a matter of seconds, whether that's across the world or not. Now that's getting quite quick as well. And I think the same should be true of market research. We should be able to do things that updates in seconds, so that the person doing the next task can take that data and do what they want to do with it, and process it the way they want to. So yeah, I think automation is important. I think it's being a bit over talked about by some software companies at the moment, as though it's already been achieved. And there are there's actually some quite low cost bits of software out there where they have achieved automation, but that's automation within the confines of their own software. So I know there's platforms out there where you can collect data online. You click a button and you get some top line counts or some summary figures. You click another button and you get some tables. You click another button and you've got some charts, or you've got it in an online dashboard. All right, there's a little bit more work than that. And it's very good, that, and it's fantastic if it's good enough for your survey. But of course, market research agencies tend to need something a bit more customized than that, because they're delivering a service to someone else typically. And, that isn't good enough because it's only working within the confines of what that platform does. When I talk about automation, I'm not talking about automation only within the confines of your software. I'm talking about being able to automate processes across whatever platforms people choose. Of course, provided those platforms are, it's possible to automate those platforms. But I'm hoping that the market research industry adopts things like Tsapi and moves forward to, so that they can link, or everyone can link what they want to what they want. I'm sure some software suppliers won't want to do that because they want to, if you like, have everything in their platform. Well, I think that will be a mistake personally, but it's certainly not our policy. So that's what automation is all about for me, and that's why it's important.
Okay, and what's the pricing of the new MRDCL software?
We haven't changed the price. Actually, if anything, we've reduced it a little bit for some of the smaller sites. But generally, MRDCL is the same price. MRDCL Central is free. There will be an MRDCL Central Plus next year, and there will be a small fee if you want to use the advanced import from SPSS or the advanced automated reporting tool. So if you want to be able to write script that will both do tables and then feed that through to PowerPoint, there will be an extra module to buy there. It won't be expensive. We're not talking about anything like the same price as MRDCL. We're just talking about a little add-on module, which will be at a very competitive price, a very low price. So basically, the pricing hasn't changed. Otherwise, you'll get all these new things if you're a current user included. And indeed, we've actually dropped the price a little bit for some of the smaller sites that the user might want to use MRDCL.
For the next question is for users, can you tell us about some of the more detailed features of MRDCL Classics?
Yes, I've talked a lot about automation, and I've talked a lot about MRDCL Central and how we're looking at automation. There are a lot of things that have gone into the new Classic version, and it's something I probably should have mentioned earlier on in the session here. I mean, we've really responded to some of the things that have come up over the last couple of years and tried to include them in this version. And one of those that's come up, I think, with more and more regularity is the ability to read data from a CSV file directly into MRDCL. And so there's a new syntax in MRDCL now that lets you read from data that's in a CSV file. It must have a heading, and those headings are matched with the variable names. But that's a new tool, so you can now define variables directly from a CSV file based on the headings in that CSV file. The other thing that we've done is we've really upped the limits. It's something we've done over the years. Occasionally I do that with some trepidation, I must admit, but the record length was 99,999 characters. We've upped that now to 300,000. More and more the data that's coming in these days contains a lot of text, and so some people either have used software where it's not possible to strip out that text, which makes it so big, or it's just more convenient for them to leave the text in there. So we've upped the record length to 300,000, and We've upped the limits within Mrdcl as well. So the number of items in a single or multivariable is now 30,000 rather than 10,000. The number of rows in a table is now 30,000 rather than 10,000. The number of columns in a table is 5,000 rather than 1,000. So there's a lot of things that we've just upped the limits. And likewise with data statements, I think it was 250,000 items you could have in a data statement. That's now 2 million. So we really upped the limits to allow you to do things where there's big files particularly coming through from other software, and particularly where those files are difficult for people to clean. We've added a new variable type, actually. The first one, I don't know how long, many years, but there's a new variable type now to cope with big integers. So we do find, again, that sometimes big integers are encountered, perhaps 13, 15, 20-digit numbers, for example, and that's sometimes telephone numbers that are encountered, or it's sometimes some identification that appears in data, particularly with online surveys where numbers are being allocated automatically. So we've got a new variable type. It's called DJ. So DJ now means define a J variable, which is like an integer, but just a lot more characters than before. We've got this concept now of the control STP file, and it's not mandatory, but it's just good practice that you have an STPX file now. And an STPX file is deemed the control file that runs any subfiles. And there's some clients who put all of their script in one file, so they probably wouldn't bother using it. But there's a significant number of others who put, perhaps have 200 STP files on a project where every question is perhaps in a different STP file. And it's nice to have an STPX file to sort of manage those, or be the sort of master file, if you like, that controls all of those. We've added in some new interactive commands as well, so that you can automate runs. So if you want to run them automatically, or you want to feed parameters to some automatic runs, we've got some new commands in to do that. And finally, and I think probably I should mention as well, is that Mrdcl now links directly to Resolve, our secondary analysis software that we have recently released. So yeah, some really good things in there, just for ordinary classic users as well, not just the new features in Central. So hopefully there's something in there for everybody.
Okay, so Phil, you mentioned Resolve as one of the new features, right? Can you explain briefly what Resolve is?
Yes, for those who haven't come across it yet, Resolve is something new that we released the base version of Resolve just a couple of months ago. So Resolve is a secondary analysis tool that comes off the back of Mrdcl. So if you want to distribute your project to colleagues or clients, it's a free piece of software, Resolve base, that lets people do secondary analysis on projects. So if they want to do question 1 by question 5 for everybody under 35 years of age, they can run that table themselves and get the results. And actually, they can already get a chart of that as well. So that has got some of the charting components already in it. So it's there for secondary analysis on projects that have been run in Mrdcl, or in fact in QPSMR as well. So either of those products can feed data straight into Resolve. We've also got a premium version of Resolve, which will be coming out in the not too distant future, and that has two sort of major things in it. The first of those is that you'll be able to use these tools we talked about earlier in Mrdcl, but you'll be able to automate charts and reports in PowerPoint and Excel. And the second thing is that is really powerful is that it has the ability to have add-ins, some people call them plugins, so that you can use bits of Mrdcl script to do quite complex analysis. So let's say you wanted to have a summary table of your own design, which would normally need script to do it. You can use a plugin so that you can do that just through a menu system. You fill in some bits on a form effectively, and that will generate the table you want. And we will have something like 20 add-ins that you can use if you buy a Resolve Premium license. Resolve Premium, again, is a fairly modestly priced piece of software, and certainly gets very cheap per user if you've got multiple users. I think it starts at about $300 or $400 for one user. And the idea of the add-ins is that you can either use any of our ones that we've got that are available free, or we can build add-ins for you, or indeed you can build your own add-ins. There'll be a guide into how you build your own add-ins in Resolve, so that Mrdcl users can give people add-ins that their colleagues or their clients can use to do more complex things. So yes, some really exciting things going on in Resolve as well, and we'll be putting out some more publicity on that in the near future. So that's something that's planned for 2021 and beyond. So yeah, some really good things in there, which I hope people will find really useful when they're using Resolve.
So Phil, finally, we can expect this year.
I think I've outlined quite a bit of what we got planned for the sort of next year or two. I think linking our software to as many things as possible, automation, tying in with Tsapi so that you can link to other bits of software easily is something that we're very keen to push. Resolve so that colleagues and clients can take Mrdcl projects and do secondary analysis easily, and not just basic secondary analysis. They can do quite advanced things in Resolve as well, as long as they understand how to use it. So I think there's some really important things happening that will just make that whole process. And of course, I haven't spent much time talking about hooking projects running Mrdcl directly into the CYS platform for building dashboards. And I think that's something that, although we've started on this year, that's something that I think will sort of come into fruition and be much more beneficial in 2021 when we've built the full links to that as well. So a lot of really exciting things happening, and I think by the end of 2021, I think people will see some real productivity gains and some real automation gains. And we've done a lot of work here in one go. This work we've just done has been in development for 2 years, possibly even slightly over that. We would welcome feedback because we want to keep pushing it in the directions that people think is beneficial to them. And so, we really would welcome ideas or things that make it even better than what we've done. We've already run our developments past a selected number of people, and we've had good positive feedback. But we'd also like to not just get good positive feedback, well, we like that, but we'd also like people to suggest ideas that make things even better, because it's certainly our goal to stay as number one in terms of tabulation software.
All right, so thank you so much, Phil, for that wonderful question and answer that we had for today. And we are very excited for the new release of Mrdcl software. Thank you so much for your time, and have a good day.
Thanks, Nikki. Nice talking to you. Goodbye.